First story. My fiancé betrayed me by contacting and trying a forced reconciliation with my entitled parents, with whom I cut ties after they used all my inheritance of $100,000 on themselves. I don't know how to get past this, as I thought my in-laws were my parents and even called my Phil my dad. I am 25M and the youngest of 3 siblings, 33F and 31F. My parents, 63F and 60M, are owners of a grocery store that was passed down through my father's side of the family for generations. My grandparents, on both my dad and mom's sides, left me and my siblings each a college or trust fund of $100,000. Each of my sisters blew through their money and dropped out of college. Both of them became single mothers to my 3 nieces, 10F, 8F, and 7F, and came back to work for my parents' store. I was the only kid who didn't work for my parents' business, as I got a job as a landscaper for the summers and after school throughout my entire high school years and saved up about $20K. I got accepted into college on a partial scholarship, and I was beyond thrilled because I knew I had a great opportunity to leave college debt-free and own my own home by the time I was 22. Just as my sisters did when they turned 18, I asked my parents to turn over access to the trust because I wanted to have the money under my control, just like my sisters did. That's when my parents told me we would discuss this at dinner tonight. So at the dinner, my whole family was there, including my nieces. When it was time to talk about my trust, my dad and mom asked me if I would consider holding off on accessing the trust for 2 years, as they had to use some of the money to cover some of the healthcare and living costs of their grandchildren, and also pay off a lawsuit that my sister Gloria received for a DUI. I asked how much they used, and my mom said there is currently $5K left in the account. So, they spent $95K, and none of it went to me. My dad said, "We just needed you to think about your family and understand that we needed your help with this request." I said, "Isn't it great that everyone benefited from this money besides the person it was intended for?" Gloria and Lori got to go to college and travel the world with their money, while with my money I got to pay for all their mistakes. My last words to my family were that this was not a request, as the decision was already made, and I moved out and left. I still went to college as I had a partial scholarship, and over those years I used the money I had in my savings to start my own landscaping business, which employs 6 guys, and we are doing great. I never got a chance to spend any of the money my grandparents left for me, as my parents never built up the trust. 2 years ago, I found out from my lawyer when I sent in a formal request to access the trust that the current balance was $3,456.13, less than the $5K my parents told me about. My sisters and parents have tried to reconnect throughout the years, but I have always resent every gift, letter, and invitation they have sent me back to them. I am getting married next month, and my fiancé wants to meet my family and help me close this chapter in my life. My fiancé wants me to forgive and move on, as I haven't spoken to them in years. But Reddit, am I in the wrong for telling my fiancé sorry? But I cannot move on from this. Update. So much has happened that I think the best way to do this is to put this in the key points and answer in the comments. Thank you to everyone who sent me direct messages and wrote to me in the comments. The thread was locked after 4 hours of it being posted, so it blew up fast, and I know everybody did not get a chance to comment last time. As a result, my inbox was flooded, so I wanted to give the best update I could because so many of you took an interest in my story. What has happened since? Fiancé admitted to speaking with my family on Facebook Messenger, and they also spoke in person when she said they met each other in a restaurant. Happened a month ago. The fiancé said it was very emotional. I told my fiancé that I was extremely disappointed that she withheld this information from me for a month. Fiancé told me she felt guilty and was afraid to tell me because she thought I might break up with her and cancel the wedding if I found out. She wanted to wait till after the wedding to tell me. However, yesterday, my mom called her directly, begging her to help me reunite our family. She missed so much of my life, and she doesn't want to miss another milestone, the wedding. Fiancé knows she has violated my trust and gave me the most heartfelt, sincere apology I have ever heard in my life and asked for forgiveness. She even had her parents ask me to forgive her and not cancel the wedding. Her dad and mom told me they loved me and hoped I could move past this. Her dad loves me. He literally has a picture of me in his office. Just me and him, lol. He has introduced me as his son for the past 2 years. He cried and said he didn't want to lose me as a son. I forgave my fiancé. Sisters came to my business with my nieces and desperately wanted to talk. Sisters deeply regret their part in the decisions that were made on their behalf and want to be a family again. They understand my position and my anger, but they miss me and want me back in their lives. My nieces also asked why I don't come around anymore and if I was mad at them. Sisters explained that this has destroyed our parents' marriage, as it has now come out that my mom apparently spent the majority of the money without my dad knowing. And then when he found out, my mom wanted dad to say it was both of their decision because she believes if it came out that it was her that decided by herself and not my dad. I would never forgive her, no matter what, and I would disown her because I always accused her of playing favorites. TBH, she is right. I would have disowned her. My mom pleaded with my dad to cover for her decision to empty my fund. Dad was furious, but decided to say he and my mom decided to spend the money. Dad now resents our mom because he no longer has a relationship with his only son. He also hears from his friends how great of a relationship me and Phil have. I call Phil Dad. He calls me his son. Dad told my mother that either she fixes this or he is done with her, and he is telling me the truth. I told my sisters that I love them and my nieces, and I do not hate them. However, they helped rob me of a very important gift that our grandparents gave each of us, and I missed out on life experiences that they got to experience and I did not. It is like they stole my last gift that our grandparents left for me. We all cried, and I accepted their apology. But I told them I do not know how to let go of this resentment I feel towards them. I let them know our relationship would take time to rebuild. I asked them to set up a meeting with just me and Dad, and not my mom. I met with my dad alone. My dad was shocked that I requested the meeting. He looked defeated and asked to speak first. My dad told me he is, and has been depressed for the last few years, and feels like he truly failed me as my father. And he knows he betrayed me, and as a father, he must take that to his grave that he is the reason his son hates him. He said he is extremely jealous of the relationship I have with my Phil, and he just started crying for like 3 minutes straight. I told him I knew it was Mom who decided to spend the money. I told him I understood why he didn't throw Mom under the bus, but he deeply hurt me by covering for Mom's decision this long. I told him I loved him and said he didn't owe me anything anymore. He is done owing Mom's debt. We both cried and hugged for like 5 minutes. I invited him. My sisters and my nieces went over to dinner at my place that night without Mom. I let my sisters and my dad know that if they came to dinner with my mom, this would be the last time we spoke. My mom clearly found out about the reunion without her and wanted to speak. I refused her request and told her to please bring a check for $100K if you want to talk to me. My wedding is on September 3rd, and I have since invited everyone but my mom. My sisters want me to hear Mom's side of the story, and my dad has said he is done covering for my mom's decision. My fiancé is happy and supports my decision 100%, even though I know she wants me to meet with my mother. She just got forgiven herself, so she doesn't want to push Reddit. Should I meet with my mom before or after she hands me the check for $100K? Second story. My autistic uncle, who I cut ties with after he sawed me, came back, apologized after 10 years, and ruined all my healing once again. I can't share with my father because he will kill him. Basically, what the title says. Please know that this is a pretty detailed post, and try not to read it because it could be really triggering. I just want to get this off my chest. I need someone besides my therapist to hear me. I 18F was sawed by my autistic uncle relevant from ages 7-9. The only reason it stopped was because I moved to a new country with my family. Now, almost a decade later, I'm moving back to my home country P for personal reasons. Long story. The only other relevant details are that my dad lives in P, and it's very common and traditional to live as a large joint family there. So I lived in the same house as P. Just over a week ago, I got a phone call from my dad. This isn't unusual, as we're very close and call often. Right off the bat, he tells me that my uncle, let's call him B, wants to talk to me, and I just hand the phone over to him. I was caught completely off guard, and I may have been in too much shock to fully understand what the F was going on at the time. The conversation went like this. M is me, and B is my uncle. B: hello, M. I just want to apologize quickly. M: still in shock and playing dumb due to fight or flight. Oh, why? B: I did something very bad when you were younger. You may not remember it because you were so young. I just want to say I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have done it. M: oh, you mean like scold me or something? B: no, it was bad. And my dad stole the phone back, and the conversation was cut short. I stayed in shock for a couple of days, and to be honest, I'm still kind of in shock. I haven't seen or heard from B since the last time he had his way with me. Now that I'm going back to my home country, he's apologizing. Why now? Obviously, I'll have to face him again, But I would have been fine just pretending that nothing ever happened and avoiding him. I was doing so well at repressing the memories. But just hearing his voice, I remembered everything. I feel like a helpless little girl all over again. I can't sleep. Whenever I try, it's like I'm back there with him. I can feel him on me, in me, all over me. I can hear him telling me to keep this between us. Our secret. I can feel him acting out his disgusting fetishes with me. I can't shower. I can't see myself naked. I look at myself, and I feel disgusted. He stole my value and my dignity from me. A girl's virginity is her entire worth in my culture. Before he apologized, I could at least pretend. Pretend he didn't know any better because he's autistic. I know it sounds ableist, but as a child, I wasn't educated on autism. I truly grew up letting myself believe that he didn't know it was wrong, and that he didn't mean to. But he apologized, right before I go back. Call me crazy, but to me, that's just too convenient. Does this mean he knew? Did he know that what he was doing could get me killed? Could you make me a child bride to an old man? I can't help it. I think he knew. He knew that he was hurting a little girl, and he didn't care. Because of him, I stopped being born just 7 years after I was born. He made me a woman before I bled. I've grown up hating myself. I over-sexualize myself today for validation that I'm still worth something. I can't emotionally connect with anyone because of how effed up I am in my head because of him. He defiled me without my consent, and is now apologizing without it too. I can't forgive him. I can't face him. I can't pretend it didn't happen, and I silently hate him. Everything would have been fine if he just kept his mouth shut. I don't want his apology. I want him to get effing stoned to death. The worst part of it is that I can't do anything about it. I'm a woman. My country doesn't care about women's rights. If I told anyone, the police, or my family, I would just be hurting myself. B is an autistic man, and I am a woman. He's autistic. He didn't know what he was doing. You shouldn't have provoked him. You shouldn't have been with him. You should have known better. What did you expect? You can't blame him. That's what they'll say. I can't tell my dad. As much as I want B to be held accountable, my dad might literally kill him. And I don't want my dad to think of me differently because I'm not a virgin. I doubt he will, but I can't even slightly risk damaging our bond. My dad is the only person I have. B's ruined everything again. I just needed to get that out. Sorry for the long post. Update. Hello everyone. A few months ago, I made a post on here about this, but later deleted it because I got really overwhelmed. I re-uploaded it to my profile to refer to in case. Spoiler, this may not be the update you want to hear. Firstly, I want to address the comments that suggested my father knew. I have been back since January, so I've had a bunch of time to contemplate and find out if this was true. The overwhelming response that my dad knew was hard to deal with, especially because he is my whole world. As people, you are right to be concerned about my dad not supporting me. However, I want to remind those of you who went too far and personally reached out to me to call my dad's names that you do not know me. You don't know me, my father, or anything about my life. And the things you said were very insensitive and hurtful. On the other hand, thank you to those reaching out and offering support. It feels nice to know I'm not alone, and it gives me hope that there are good people out there. I'm happy to inform you that he did not know, and I'll explain this further in a second. I just need to explain my relationship with my father first. My parents' marriage was the kind of marriage where they should have divorced years ago, but stayed together because of the kids. My relationship with my mother is a very complicated story for another day, but my dad has always been my best friend. He's very supportive, loving, and protective of me and my siblings. Growing up, he was always working overtime to provide for us, and never letting us feel like we lacked anything as kids, even though we were not the most well off. My dad is a very big and intimidating man. Normally, he wouldn't dare hurt a fly, and is a very cuddly bear. But if anyone hurts his daughters as drastically as B the attacker hurt me, he would 100% brutally hurt them. Another small thing is that B is not my dad's brother. He's his cousin. It's just normal for me to refer to him as my uncle, because families tend to be very large in my culture, and there's a shortage of titles in relation to the family members. Anyway, because Papa was always working so much, he wasn't around to notice anything. When he was around, he always took my sisters and me out to spend the day together. On to the stuff people want to know about. A couple of months after being back, the comments about my dad knowing really weighed on me. My father and I often stay up late insomnia and just watch movies while talking to each other. I brought up the phone call, and I asked him why he took the call so abruptly. He told me he got a call from his boss and had to answer urgently as he was on call. This checks out because, my entire life, I have been known to be a very popular person with my coworkers and friends. He gets a call from someone literally every 5 minutes. It turns out he's actually wanted to bring up this topic for a while too. He only hesitated because he sensed I was uncomfortable on the phone call and didn't want to overstep in case I wasn't ready. Papa told me that he found B's behavior very strange, as B and I never talk about each other. Apparently, B told him that he wanted to apologize to me because, according to him, we had a very sour relationship. B said that he felt like I was very mean to him growing up because he was autistic, and in retaliation, he was mean to me. Now that he's older, he realizes he should have been the bigger person and feels that he should apologize. I don't know why I feel like I need to explain this, but I didn't even know B was autistic until I left the country. I always questioned why B did what he did to me until I found out about his autism through my mom, which is when I started using it as an excuse for his actions. Papa then said that he thought this was strange and wanted to confirm if it was true with me. I asked him why he needed me to confirm this, and he replied that, looking back, he remembered that I was always very grumpy as a child when B was around. He said back then that he always wondered why I was so happy around the rest of my family, but was always off, for lack of a better word, with B. He said that even if I was mean, he should have been there to protect me because B could have seriously hurt me because of his autism. B could have been pretty violent back then. He explained that he didn't realize it at the time due to how much he was working, and he feels guilt because he should have been around more. I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth, to be honest. I just told him that it was true, but he shouldn't worry because it's in the past, and I want to leave it there. He accepted this, but just said that I can always talk to him about anything, and he just hugged me. There's a bit more in us talking and him comforting me, but I honestly don't think it's relevant. I know you may not agree with this decision. I don't either, but for now I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to explain why here, so I don't have to deal with more draining private messages. 1. I feel guilt for Papa feeling guilt due to never being around. He did all he could to provide for me, and if he was at home all the time, he wouldn't be able to provide for his family. Unless you're stupidly wealthy, you can't have it both ways. He's made a lot of sacrifices for us, and has gone through literal hell in his life, but he still managed to be the best father in the world. I'm very grateful for all Papa's done and all he continues to do to this day. 2. My family here is very tight-knit. Living here for the last few months has been so great, because everyone is so loving, supportive, and astronomically funny. We're always visiting each other, hanging out, and just being present in each other's lives. Something like this would break up our family. While I know with 100% confidence that almost everyone will support me and disown B, this news will hurt our family socially. I will be known as a W publicly. Fine for me. I don't really care about me in this situation, and my relatives will always be associated negatively with me for supporting me. 3. B's mother, my grandaunt. I don't know what you call them in English, but she's more like a second grandmother. Here is another reason I can't tell anyone. We'll call her A. She always lives with us and has 4 kids, 3 daughters, 1 son. Her husband died when the kids were very young. Her daughters are married, but her son, B, is not due to his autism, which is why he still lives here. Culturally, no family is willing to marry their daughter off to an autistic man. 2 years ago, my grandmother A's older sister died, and she's like a second mom for my father and all my aunts and uncles. My grandfather has dementia and is basically on his deathbed, so she is the only head parental figure left in this house. This sort of thing will devastate her heavily, and I don't want to bring this guilt onto her while she's at a very fragile age in her life. She's been taking care of B all his life and loves him dearly as his mother. Even at this age, she looks after B, not that he can't do it himself. He's very capable, and finding out something so horrible about her son could cause serious harm to her health. Not just because he's her son, but because he hurt me, and she also loves me dearly. If one day I decide to tell my family, it will be after it has already passed, because I can't do this to her. She deserves to go, thinking she did everything right. Those are some of the bigger reasons I've decided to keep this to myself for now. The only other person besides my therapist who knows is one of my cousins, Z. When I told Z, I kid you not, he was ready to beat the crap out of B. But I reminded him of the repercussions of this breaking out, and told him that sharing this is my decision alone. He cannot make this choice for me. He agreed, and said that he was sorry that I had to go through this alone. He's always here for me to vent, and he'll be here to support me if when I do decide to tell the rest of the family. He's distanced himself from B, even though I told him he doesn't have to on my account. But he insisted and said he's ashamed of B and doesn't want to be involved with him. I'm truly grateful for his support and his understanding. As for B and I, we mostly just avoid each other. My family lives in a big house, and when I'm not in my room sewing, I'm mingling with other family members or just hanging out with my dad. B hasn't tried anything, and we don't talk. I feel secure because I'm never alone in a room with him, or really in any room he's in, even for a second. And if at any point he triggers my PTSD, I just cave in my room. I have lots here to distract me, and being around the rest of my family is healing in an odd way. I'm not completely isolated. I have Z to talk to if I ever need it. I just prefer not to talk about it. Sorry if this was a long update. I just wanted to go over the concerns from the last post. Also, sorry for being all over the place and for any or all grammatical errors. I'm in a rush as I have a class soon. Oh yeah, my dad also enrolled me in a fashion design course since he knows I'm very passionate about it and doesn't want me to get bored. Thank you, Papa. I love you. Thank you, kind people, for your sweet words, and I hope you're all doing well. Third story. My wife's best friend and her husband proposed to have a threesome with my wife, like good old times while drunk, including me to watch while they were having sex. So I raised my discomfort, but my wife brushed it off as a joke. I've known this for a long time, but when my wife was younger, she had a few threesomes with her best friend and her husband then boyfriend. This was years before we even met, and she told me early in our relationship that there would be no secrets. I've never had a problem with my wife being around her best friend alone, since the threesome didn't involve much girl on girl, but more sharing her boyfriend. And for that reason, I've had trouble throughout our marriage being around both of them. I just have trouble having a normal conversation, knowing that this guy has had sex with my wife. My wife doesn't think anything of it, and is completely comfortable with it. It's just something she did for a little while, then stopped because she wasn't into it anymore once the taboo thrill wore off. She can even talk about it with them as casually as she talks about a concert they went to. However, she doesn't do this when I'm around because she knows it makes me uncomfortable. Anyway, we were all together last weekend, and her friend had gotten a little drunk and brought it up. My wife quickly shut her down, but the impression I got was that there had been a longer conversation leading up to this that I didn't know about. Later on, my wife told me that her friend and husband had asked if she and I were interested in doing something. They were down for whatever we were comfortable with. But my wife admitted that they really wanted her again, but with me watching. My wife knows there is no way in hell I would be down for that, and neither would she. My wife stopped doing that with them for a reason, and that's before she got married and had kids. My wife has told me to just forget they said anything, but holy SHT, how can I do that now? I swallowed being around them when these incidents were well in the past, but now that they are openly lusting for my wife, I don't know if I feel comfortable with her or me being around them. Am I wrong here? How do I navigate this? I don't want to tell my wife to break off her friendship, but something I feel needs to be done. TLDR. My wife had a threesome with her friend and husband, and they want to do it again. Now I don't want them around anymore. Edit. Thanks for all the comments. I'm glad I'm not blowing this out of proportion, and my response is normal. For context, I do want to add that they were all together 3 times, and my wife stopped it simply because she stopped being into it. She only participated because her friend was bragging about her boyfriend's skill in the bedroom and insisted that she try it. She did, and she found that no amount of skill could overcome the fact that she wasn't very attracted to him. My wife also really isn't into girls. She participated with her friend, but it was the first and last for her. Just not her thing. So I really am not worried about her doing anything with them, because she had ample opportunity before we met, and she passed. Also, a lot of people are criticizing my wife for not telling me about the conversation, but I'm actually fine with that. She said no to both of us. I'm not angry at her for that. I'm angry at them for trying to basically kirk me. Relevant comments. CrazyHermit74. I think there is much more to this story. I think it is downright strange that you and your wife are in contact with them, let alone friends, after you started dating your wife. I'm almost positive that there is more going on than you know. Sure, it is possible that your wife hasn't had any contact with either of them since you began dating. But to me, it really seems odd to be in a friendship with people who have had sex multiple times with her. Like others have said, it is like an ex-spouse or dating partner being friends with her while married to you. OP. Her best friend is a swinger. It's just that simple. Her and her husband have sex with different people, sometimes together, sometimes separated. It's just part of their lifestyle. It's not how my wife is. In her early 20s, when she was more sexually adventurous, she was down for this stuff. But that's in the past. OP further explains what they wanted. I'm actually offended that they really want me to watch. Like, that's one of their kinks, to humiliate me. This guy wants to have sex with my wife, the mother of my children, and look me in the face while he does it. Update. After I posted, I had a deeper conversation with my wife about her friends and expressed my discomfort about being around people who were lusting after my wife and fantasizing about having sex with her in front of me. She said she understood how I felt, but told me that there was absolutely nothing I should be concerned about. My wife, her friend, and her husband are not serious people. They are fun to be around, but that's it. She experimented with them in her early 20s, but she was a different person then. She was very sexually adventurous in college and right after, and she did a lot of things she'd never thought of doing now. She said she's a 35-year-old married mother of 2 with a serious career, and she simply isn't interested in behaving like that anymore. Not to mention that she is happily married and loves me. I understood all that, and I do trust her. I told her that my point still stands. I am just not comfortable around them. My wife then asks if we could talk it out with her friends, and if after that talk I'm still uncomfortable, she will agree to whatever I am comfortable with. So I agree, and we met last night at our house. They both apologize and swear to never bring it up again. But I can tell that neither think of this as a big deal, and from their tone, it seems like they think I am being overly sensitive. So I raise that point, and they concede that they do think that I am being silly. They tell me that the time they had with my wife was such a memorable experience that they wanted to experience it again, and simply asked if my wife would be interested in participating with me, or with my approval. They say that they would have been happy to allow me to participate in any way I liked. But they did admit that their biggest fantasy was to basically double-team my wife while I watched. But my wife had no interest. They confirmed that she shut it down quickly. They brought it up later, while they were drunk, because they figured maybe I would have some interest. And if I did, I could convince her to do it. My wife's friend then says that once I let go of my inhibitions, she guarantees that I will enjoy myself. How they think I would enjoy any experience that involves someone else effing my wife, whether I am actively involved or not, is beyond me. I am about to say this when my wife jumps in. She tells them that I will not be enjoying anything. She says she's not 22 anymore and has babies asleep upstairs. She tells them that neither of us will be effing anyone else, and she thought she made that very clear. It got a little awkward after that, and they left shortly after. My wife hugged me when they left and said she was sorry for asking me to talk with them. That was not how she expected it to go. We talked a little more, and she admitted that hearing their stories was a fun escape, and she even got flattered when they would tell her how much they loved being with her. But she admitted that it's become a little too real, and she could not stand the thought of watching me with someone else. She understood how I feel. So we agreed to take a good, long break from seeing them. My wife isn't going to completely cut her best friend out of her life, but we are going to manage how we see them. No more drinking. No more being alone with both of them in their home or ours. Shopping, lunch, and similar activities are where she is going to keep the friendship, and I can live with that. Relevant comments. Crazib 2000. Your wife is 1 in a million and didn't deserve any of the hate she got in your last post. Neither of you have done anything wrong, and you guys handled this situation perfectly. OP. Thanks. I never blamed her. She has been upfront with me from the beginning of our relationship about the things she's done. When asked if he's sure the wife doesn't want to have threesomes anymore, my wife had ample opportunity before we met to do this again with them. She stopped it 3 times, and they tried for an entire year before we met to convince her to do it again. But she said no. It just wasn't something she was into. The girl-on-girl stuff isn't her thing, and she isn't very attracted to the husband. Once the taboo of the whole thing wore off, she was no longer interested. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.